The call came at 6:37 in the morning. I know the exact time because I had just set my coffee down on the counter and glanced at my phone before picking it up. I almost didn't answer. I was already running late, already mentally drafting the email I needed to send before my 9 o'clock meeting, already calculating whether I had time to stop for gas. But it was my mother, and with my mother, not answering always cost more than answering. "Your brother needs you," she said. No hello, no good morning. I waited. He found a place. A really good place, Waverly. 3 bedrooms, good school district, close to your father and me. The landlord wants first and last month, plus a deposit. It's time sensitive. I set the coffee down very carefully. "Mom, it's not even 7. I know what time it is. I'm saying the opportunity won't wait. My brother Donnie is 34 years old. He has a wife, Steph, and 2 kids, a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old. He has worked on and off as a handyman. He is charming and loud and the kind of person who makes friends everywhere he goes, who remembers everyone's birthday, who will absolutely show up to help you move, once. He is also, and I say this with full awareness of how it sounds, completely incapable of sustaining anything that requires consistent effort over time. I am 31. I am a project manager at a logistics firm. I have worked the same job for 4 years, gotten 2 promotions, and spent the last 3 of those years living below my means so that I could save enough to eventually buy a place of my own. My parents know this. They have always known this, and for as long as they have known it, they have treated my savings account like a resource that existed for the benefit of the family. "How much?" I asked. $6,200. I didn't say anything. "Waverly, he has 2 babies. You want them living in that apartment? The heat doesn't even work right." I knew the apartment. I had helped them move in 2 years ago, which is to say I had rented the truck, packed most of the boxes, and covered the moving costs because Donnie had said he was short. I had told myself that was a one-time thing. "I'll think about it," I said, which was the only way to end a conversation with my mother without it turning into an hour. "Don't think too long," she said. "The landlord is showing it again Saturday. I want to tell you who I was before I understood what was happening to me because I think it matters. I was not someone who made waves. I was not someone who said no. I was the daughter who came home for every holiday, who sent birthday cards, who answered the phone on the first ring. I had been raised to believe that family was everything and that everything meant anything you had. My parents immigrated from Trinidad when I was 4. They worked hard. They sacrificed real things, time, comfort, ambition, and they made it clear from the time I was old enough to understand that the point of that sacrifice was so that their children could have more. What they didn't say, or what I didn't hear until much later, was that having more came with an expectation attached. The more you had, the more you owed. Donnie was never asked to carry this the way I was. I don't think my parents even noticed that. He was the younger one, the funny one, the one who needed looking after. I was the responsible one, the capable one, and capable in my family's language meant available. I was 19 when I first lent my brother money, $300 so he could pay his share of rent on an apartment he was living in with friends. I didn't have $300 to spare. I was working at a sandwich shop and taking classes part-time, but I gave it anyway because my mother said family helps family and I didn't have the language yet to say that I also needed help. He never paid it back. Neither of us ever mentioned it again. By the time I was 25 and working my first real job, the amounts had gotten larger. A car repair here, a security deposit there, $2,000 when Steph was pregnant with their first, and Donnie had just quit a job because, in his words, his manager was disrespectful. I gave it. I always gave it, and every time I gave it, I told myself it was the last time. I kept a separate savings account that I didn't tell anyone about. My company transferred me to Charlotte 3 years ago. My parents and Donnie live outside of Columbus, Ohio. I had mixed feelings about the distance when I first moved. I was close to my parents in the way that people who have complicated relationships with their parents are close, which is to say that I loved them and they stressed me out and I couldn't fully separate those two things. But the distance helped. The calls got shorter. The requests got less frequent, if not less intense. I had been in Charlotte for 18 months when I found the neighborhood I wanted to live in. I started going to open houses on weekends the way some people go to the farmer's market, not quite ready to commit but wanting to understand the landscape. I knew what I could afford. I knew what I wanted. I had been pre-approved. I was not telling anyone about this. This was not an accident. I had learned, slowly and at some cost, that telling my family about my plans in advance meant having my plans negotiated. My promotion had turned into a conversation about how maybe now I could help with Donnie's kids' daycare costs. My paid-off car had prompted a suggestion that I could give Donnie my old one and just buy a new one since I was doing so well. Every milestone I reached was immediately assessed for how it could benefit someone else. So I said nothing. I looked at houses, I saved. I waited. The $6,000 phone call was in March. I didn't give my brother the money. I told my mother that I didn't have it liquid right now, which was not entirely untrue. I did not have money I was willing to pull out of savings right now. And she made it sound like she was absorbing a blow, and we got off the phone. 3 weeks later, I put an offer on a house in a neighborhood called Chantilly. It was not a mansion. It was a 1,600-square-foot craftsman bungalow with 3 bedrooms and a small backyard and original hardwood floors that creaked in 2 specific places that I learned to love. It was the right house. I knew it the first time I walked in. My offer was accepted in April. I closed in May. I told my parents the day I got the keys. My mother's first response was not congratulations. Her first response was not congratulations. Her first response was, how many bedrooms? 3, I said. There was a pause that lasted longer than pauses usually last. So there's room. Room for what? For Donnie and Steph and the kids. Waverly, they are still looking. You have 3 bedrooms. You are 1 person. I sat down on my new kitchen floor with the keys in my hand. The floors creaked slightly when I shifted my weight. Mom, this is my house. I bought it for me. You bought a 3-bedroom house for 1 person? I bought the house I wanted. That is so selfish, she said, and her voice went quiet in the way it went quiet when she was working up to something larger. Your brother has children. You understand that? Babies. And you are sitting in a house with extra rooms. I'm not doing this, I said. Doing what? Acknowledging that you have more than you need while your family struggles? I got off the phone. My hands were shaking a little, which annoyed me. I had known this was coming. I had prepared for this conversation in my head approximately 40 times in the last 2 months. And still. My father called that evening. He is softer than my mother, or he presents as softer, which is not quite the same thing. He said he was proud of me, which he meant, and then he said he hoped I had thought about how much space I had and how my brother's situation wasn't improving, which he also meant. Dad, I said, I love you. I'm not letting Donnie move in. No one is saying move in, he said, in a way that suggested he was absolutely saying move in. I've been helping Donnie my whole life, I said. I've given him money I didn't have. I've covered things I shouldn't have covered. I did it because I love him, and because you raised me to take care of my family. But this is my house. I saved for this by myself. I can't keep giving everything and having nothing left. He was quiet for a moment. Then, he's your brother. I know he's my brother. Family doesn't let family struggle. I know, I said. But I'm family too. He didn't have an answer for that. We stayed on the phone for another few minutes, not really saying anything, and then we said we loved each other and we hung up. My mother did not speak to me for 11 days. I know because I counted, and also because my aunt sent me a text on day 7 that said simply, call your mother, she is hurting, and I did not respond, which I felt bad about for approximately 40 minutes before deciding I had done nothing that required an apology. Donnie texted me directly on day 9. This was unusual. Donnie and I texted occasionally, memes, sports things, birthday wishes, but he did not typically text me about real things. The message said, heard you got a house. Congrats. Also heard you're not helping us out. Didn't know you were like that. I stared at the message for a while. I thought about the $300 when I was 19. I thought about the car repair. I thought about the $2,000 when Steph was pregnant, and the time after that, and the time after that. I thought about every brunch I had skipped, every trip I had declined, every small pleasure I had quietly set aside to make sure I had enough to eventually do exactly what I had done, buy a house. My house. I typed back, I'm not like anything, Donnie. I love you. I'm not able to keep doing what I've been doing. He didn't respond. That was fine. Here is something I didn't expect. The silence felt like something leaving my body. Not painlessly. It wasn't painless. It was more like how a fever breaks, where you feel terrible and then you feel the terrible shifting, and underneath it is something cooler and quieter. I had spent so many years managing my family's feelings about my money, my choices, my life, that I had not fully realized how much space that management took up. And now it was just quieter. I painted the second bedroom a color called dusty sage. I built the bookshelf I had been putting off for 2 years because I had never had a permanent enough place to put it. I planted tomatoes in the backyard and they did not do especially well, and I didn't care. I had a neighbor, Rosie, who was 73 and had lived in her house since 1989, and she brought me banana bread the week I moved in and told me the previous owners had also planted tomatoes and they had also not done well, and we laughed about that. And it was one of the nicest conversations I had in months. I thought a lot about what my father had said. Family doesn't let families struggle. I had believed that for so long that I had never stopped to ask who counted as family when it came time to divide up the struggling. My struggle, the years of overtime, the skipped vacations, the dinners I packed instead of bought, had apparently not counted. It was only visible now that I had stopped. My mother's silence broke on day 12, not because she had reconsidered anything, but because she needed to tell me something. They had come to Charlotte. She said it like that in a text. We're in Charlotte, your father and I, and Donnie and Steph and the kids. I sat with my phone in my hands and I breathed. Why? I sent back. We wanted to see your new house, and we thought if you saw the children, you would understand. This is a thing my mother does, and I am not sure she is entirely aware that she does it, where she uses Donnie's children as a sort of emotional leverage. They are real children who I love. They are also, in my mother's deployment of them, a rhetorical device. You're welcome to visit, I sent. But my answer about the house isn't going to change. They arrived 2 hours later in Donnie's van, which had a bumper sticker that said "Blessed," and was making a sound that suggested it needed new brakes. My mother got out first and looked at the house with an expression I could not immediately read. Then she said, "It's small." I had expected this to sting, and it didn't, quite. "I like it," I said. "3 bedrooms, though," she said, more to herself than to me. We went inside. Donnie's kids ran immediately to the backyard, and I let them, because they were 4 and 6 and needed to run somewhere. Steph looked tired in the way she always looked tired, which was the particular tiredness of someone who had been managing an unmanageable situation for a long time. I felt for her, actually. I had wondered over the years if she knew how much of Donnie's safety net was made of me. My mother walked through every room. She did not comment on the dusty sage. She did not comment on the dusty sage. She did not comment on the bookshelf. She stood in the doorway of the second bedroom and said, "This is a good size." "I'm going to use it as an office," I said. She looked at me. "An office for one person in a 3-bedroom house." "Yes, Waverly." She sat down on the edge of the bed I hadn't bought yet. There was just a folding table I was using temporarily, and she looked at me with an expression that was grief and frustration and love all compacted into something I didn't have a word for. "I don't understand you." "I know you don't," I said. "We raised you to take care of your family." "You did. I have been. For 12 years I have been." I sat down in the folding chair across from her and I looked at her directly. "Mom, I gave Donnie money when I was 19 and I was broke. I gave him money when Steph was pregnant. I gave him money for the car. I paid for things I've never once asked to be paid back for. I did all of that because I love this family. But I am also in this family, and I spent 12 years making sure I could do this." I gestured at the room, at the house, at the life I had built around me while no one was looking. "I'm not going to let it go because there's a spare room." She was quiet for a long time. Outside, I could hear the kids shrieking with delight over something in the yard. "Your brother is struggling," she finally said. "I know. He's been struggling my whole adult life, and I have helped him, again and again. But I cannot be the answer to every version of his struggling forever. That is not sustainable, for me or for him. So what is he supposed to do?" "I don't know, Mom. I genuinely don't know. But I think part of the reason we don't know is that there has always been me to fall back on, and maybe that has not been as helpful as I thought it was. She didn't like that. I hadn't expected her to. She pressed her lips together and looked out the window, and I watched her decide not to say the thing she was going to say. Donnie came in from the backyard with his youngest on his hip. He looked at me across the kitchen, and he looked at the house, and something moved across his face that I couldn't fully name. "Nice place," he said. "Thank you," I said. We stood there for a moment, the three of us in the kitchen of my house, with his daughter patting his shoulder and the sound of the older one outside in the yard. "I can't, Donnie," I said quietly. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't in a fight. It was just the truth. He nodded once. Slow. "Yeah," he said. "Okay." My mother made a sound like she was going to add something, and then she didn't. They left that evening. It was not warm, exactly. My mother hugged me the way she hugged me when she was disappointed, which was still a hug. My father held on an extra second and said he loved me, and I said I loved him too. The kids waved from the back window of the van until they turned the corner. I stood on my porch for a while after. The street was quiet. A dog walker went by. Rosie's porch light was on across the way. I had thought this moment would feel like something monumental, like surviving something or winning something or at least definitively ending something. It didn't feel like any of those things. It felt more ordinary than that. Like exhaling after holding your breath for a very long time, not dramatically, not painfully, just releasing. The air going out slowly and the lungs filling again. I went inside and made dinner. Real dinner, the kind that takes time. I roasted vegetables and made rice and opened a bottle of wine I had been saving. I ate at my kitchen table in my house that I had bought with money I had earned across 4 years of saying no to myself so that eventually I could say yes to this. The floors creaked in the two places they always creaked. I thought about what I would tell people if they asked. I thought about whether it was possible to explain how you could love your family completely and still refuse to disappear into them. I thought about my brother's daughter waving from the back window and how I hoped she would grow up in a world where she was taught that her own life was also allowed to matter. I didn't have all the answers. I didn't know if Donnie would figure it out, or if my mother would ever fully understand, or if the version of family I had been given was ever going to comfortably fit the version of myself I was still becoming. But the house was mine. The life inside it was mine. The tomatoes in the back were probably going to die, and I was going to plant them again next season. I had built this. And for the first time in as long as I could remember, that was enough. I've thought about this a lot since that evening. Standing on my porch, watching the van turn the corner. Donnie's kids waving from the back window until they were gone. I've thought about what it actually costs to be the responsible one in a family where responsibility gets redistributed the moment someone else needs something. What happened to me didn't come out of nowhere. It was built, slowly, over about 12 years of small decisions that each seemed reasonable in the moment. $300 when I was 19. A car repair. A deposit. $2,000 when I genuinely couldn't afford it. Each time I told myself it was a one-time thing. Each time it wasn't. And the honest truth is that I participated in building that pattern just as much as my family did. I said yes when I should have said I can't. I stayed quiet when I should have said this isn't sustainable. I let the idea that I was capable become a reason for other people to stop trying. That's not blame. I understand why I did it. I had been taught that loving your family meant absorbing their problems, and for a long time I believed that completely. But there is a version of that belief that quietly eats your life. Not dramatically. Not all at once. But in the accumulated weight of every sacrifice that no one tallies and no one returns. What I learned and what I think Waverly finally understood in that kitchen is that intelligence without boundaries is just a resource someone else will use. You can be hardworking, disciplined, and genuinely good, and still end up with nothing to show for it if you never learned that your effort is also allowed to belong to you. That is not selfishness. That is the most basic form of self-respect, and it took me an embarrassingly long time to understand that those two things are not the same. There's also something worth saying about Donnie. Not to judge him, but because I think it's honest. When someone always has a net, they never fully reckon with the ground. I don't think my parents meant to build that dynamic. I think they were trying to hold a family together, the only way they knew how. But the consequence was a brother who at 34 still hadn't been asked to fully carry himself, and a sister who had been quietly carrying him for over a decade without anyone naming it out loud. The day I stopped, something shifted. Not just for me. I think for him too, in that quiet nod he gave me across the kitchen. He didn't like it. But I think somewhere in him, he knew. The house still creaks in those two places. The tomatoes in the back are doing marginally better this year. My mother calls on Sundays now, and we talk about other things, and it is not entirely easy. But it is honest in a way that it wasn't before. I don't know what Donnie's situation looks like right now. I hope it's better. I hope he figured something out. Not because I need him to prove me right, but because I want him to know what it feels like to build something and call it yours. That feeling, I can tell you, is worth every single thing it costs to get here.